In this video, I'm going to go over Carl Jung's 9 rules for dream interpretation. Okay, so, I call them rules, but you'll find out that Jung's approach is actually very flexible, okay, to dream interpretation. But let's get right into it here. So the first rule is take dreams as facts. Okay, so the dreams you have are facts in and of themselves. They are what they are. They occurred without you willing them. They just appeared. Okay, so take them as facts. And I've got a quote here from Jung. At this point, the dream comes in as the expression of an involuntary psychic process not controlled by the conscious outlook. It prescribes the subjective state as it really is. It has no respect for my conjectures or for the patient's views as to how things should be, but simply tells how the matter stands. I've therefore made it a rule to put dreams on a plane with physiological fact. This is to say that I take dreams as facts that are invaluable for diagnosis. Okay, so a lot of the time we have a dream. I know when I wake up from a dream, and it gives you, sometimes a dream will give you a funny feeling, or it will say or show something, and your conscious mind instantly will think about it and want to reject it. You go, nah, it doesn't mean anything, or I don't want to know about that, or you just think it's so boring, I don't even care about that. But the thing is that rejection is what's blocking you from really accepting that these dreams are just to be taken as they are, as a subjective state of truly what is happening, the bigger picture of what's happening on the inside of you, in your personality, okay, and in your life. So they kind of, no matter what you want to be the case, it doesn't matter. The dream will reveal the truth in that sense, okay? So that's rule number 1. So rule number 2, dreams become blurry, so remain humble in their presence. Okay, so a lot of the time, just off what I just said just then, is we will think, oh, that means nothing. Like this is some stupid fragment of some past memory. It doesn't really mean anything. Okay, but really, the unconscious is probably more sophisticated than your stupid little thought that you have when you're all groggy in the morning. Okay, I've got a few quotes here from Jung. I'm going to read them out one after another. As a rule, dreams become less transparent and more blurred. Shortly after the beginning of the treatment, it becomes increasingly difficult to interpret them. A further reason for this being that a point may soon be reached where the doctor is unable, if the truth be told, to understand the situation as a whole. Okay, so a lot of the time we're in over our heads when it comes to interpreting dreams, and here he's talking about the context between a psychiatrist who's acting as the dream interpreter and a patient who has the dreams. Okay, so normally Jung says that the first few dreams are very clear, and then after that, because you're actively trying to figure out the dreams through the continued sessions that the psychiatrist and the patient have together, these dreams become more entangled. And so part of that is the entanglement of the alliance and the relationship between the psychiatrist and the patient themselves. But part of it is also just the focusing on it, on the dream, tends to kind of muddy up the waters there a little bit, because you're trying to wrestle with something that you don't quite understand. Okay, so be humble throughout this process. Don't just think that, oh, these things don't mean anything, or oh, I know what they mean, and just you're projecting something onto someone else, what you think something means for someone else. That brings us into something that Jung warns about, is something called suggestion. So if someone was to bring a dream to me and I was to just instantly make a judgment on it, and I just start to kind of give hints or suggesting to the person that it means a particular thing, then I'm dabbing my hand in the investigation, so to speak. So I'm muddying up the true investigation of this dream, what it really means, and I'm making it murky by suggesting to the person something. It can be quite dangerous to do that, because you're not allowing the full expression of what the actual dream fact is saying in and of itself. You are muddying the waters by your judgment on someone and what you think is best for them. And that's blocking them and you from seeing the truth about the dream facts. And that's going to hold both of you back from progressing forward, and you can just get entangled in that. Jung actually says a funny thing, that the unconscious has a way with strangling an analyst in his own theory. Okay, so an analyst will be trying to apply his own theory to a dream, and through successive interactions with the dreamer and their continuing dreams, the unconscious seems to, you know, offer up things that entangle that alliance and relationship between the dreamer and the analyst, with the analyst's own theory. So he's trying to say that the unconscious itself has a mind of its own, and it will kind of argue back with you, or it will, you know, in spite of what you've done, it will kind of continue to resist or continue to try to undermine the theories that you put forth over it. Something like that, okay? So I thought that was very interesting, okay? So, yeah, so we're still on rule number 2. Dreams become blurry, so remain humble in the present. So here's another quote from Jung. This is how the matter really stands. For to say that dreams are unintelligible is a mere reflection of the doctor's subjective opinion. Nothing is unclear to the understanding. It is only when we fail to understand that things appear unintelligible and confused. In themselves, dreams are clear. That is, they are just as they must be under the given conditions. If we look back at these unintelligible dreams from a later stage of the treatment or from a distance of some years, we are often astounded at our own blindness. I know actually when I look back through a lot of my dreams, because I have roughly a 3-year dream journal. It actually spans over more years than that, but some years I was very active at recording my dream journal and others I wasn't. But I am ramping it up more lately, so I'm actively getting my dream journal. I mean, sometimes I have so many dreams and I don't have enough time to write them all down. Sometimes it's so long. It's like I have to sit here for probably an hour to write some of them down. Not every day they're like an hour long, but sometimes they're so in depth that it just takes a really long time to record them all, a lot of energy. But anyway, what was I talking about? Yes, we're astounded at our own blindness. When I look back at some of them recently, because I'm going to release another video on my dream journal, I look at some of the dreams and I fully can see what they mean now. Whereas at that time, I didn't know what they mean. You know, so I was just blind at the time from understanding really what they meant. And these are dream series as well, not just one isolated dream. There were multiple dreams connected throughout the years. When I read them all, I can get a bigger picture and I can go, wow, okay, I do understand that now in hindsight. So they did have a meaning. I just wasn't able to discern the meaning at the time. So don't discard the dreams as unimportant or meaningless. Okay, another quote here by Jung. By taking refuge in the doctor's self-confidence and profound understanding, the patient loses all sense of reality, falls into a stubborn transference, and retards the cure. So that's what I was talking about before, when you are suggesting something to someone and the dreamer doesn't feel like they're involved in the interpretation. They're just submitting to someone to interpret the dream for them. And then that's going to just spiral into some other psychic phenomena, not actually getting at the dream itself. Okay. So this last quote here from Jung on this rule. The manifest dream picture is the dream itself and contains the latent meaning. When Freud speaks of the dream facade, he is really speaking not of the dream itself, but of its obscurity, and in so doing is projecting upon the dream his own lack of understanding. We say that the dream has a false front only because we fail to see into it. We would do better to say that we are dealing with something like a text that is unintelligible, not because it has a facade, but simply because we cannot read it. We do not have to get behind such a text in the first place, but must learn to read it. So a lot of the time when we're trying to interpret a dream straight off the bat, I know I fell prey to this a lot. I'm always trying to go beyond what the actual facts say of the dream. Instead of thinking of it like interpreting a text, I'm trying to go beyond that and try to be like, yeah, the dream isn't real. What it's actually presenting isn't real. It's hiding a meaning behind the dream, you know, and that's basically in that sense we are not being humble in the presence of dreams. So that's why it applies to rule number 2 here, being humble in the presence of dreams, because we have to be humble enough to realize that the fact of the dream, that it in how it presents itself to us, is that the dream is what it is in and of itself. It has latent meaning in and of itself. The meaning isn't behind the dream, it's in the actual dream itself. Okay, so a slight distinction there. We'll turn back around to some of these points later and you'll get a bigger picture of it as we go through some of these other rules, because all these rules are kind of interconnected. Rule number 3, okay, reach mutual agreement and joint reflection. So I've got a quote here. When the understanding is all one-sided, I find it advisable to stress my lack of understanding. Okay, so what Jung is trying to do here is he's trying to show, look, when we're dealing with dreams, we're dealing with something that's quite murky. It's quite, you know, we're treading in dark corners of the earth here. We don't quite know what's happening. So in order to mitigate against that a little bit, we can't just throw wild theories out there. We have to kind of go with the dream and go with the dreamer themselves, because the dreamer ultimately had the dream. And so that kind of brings a little bit of stability to our interpretation of dreams. It must resonate it must resonate with the dreamer. You know, that is essentially what Jung is saying here. So I'll read another quote. It is relatively unimportant whether the doctor understands or not, but everything hangs on the patient's doing so. What is really needed is mutual agreement, which is the fruit of joint reflection. So if you both reach mutual agreement in an understanding of what the dream means, then you're going to get to that from both joining together and reflecting upon the different elements of the dream. So you have to really work together. Not one person doesn't just sit here and go, I'm a supreme God and I know everything. Look, Jung himself knows all about comparative religions and the archetypes. He developed all this stuff, these ideas, and he still finds it advisable to stress his own lack of understanding and he does that so he can level the playing field, so to speak, so he can connect on par with the dreamer themselves. Okay? Here's another quote from Jung. It is one-sided and therefore dangerous understanding for the doctor to prejudge the dream from the standpoint of a certain doctrine and to make a pronouncement which may be theoretically sound but does not win the patient's assent. Okay, so you don't start with a preset doctrine, a set up systematic way of interpreting dreams. That's not what the Jungian way of interpreting dreams is. It's about partnering with the dreamer and coming to a type of understanding together. That's more about what it's about. Another quote here from Jung. We appeal only to the patient's brain if we try to inculcate a truth, But if we help him to grow up to this truth in the course of his own development, we reach his heart, and this appeal goes deeper and acts with greater force. Okay, so that's just emphasizing what I said before, is that the actual therapeutic effect of interpreting the dreams ends up to be a more powerful phenomena and result for everyone involved. Instead of you just giving and interpreting something, when you're both involved in it, there's a special type of dialectic or interaction that happens when you're both trying to figure out what the dream means and figure out a problem ultimately, because dreams are kind of like problems, and they point to solutions in the personality and how a person can move and continue on individuation, becoming more of a whole self, a whole person. And so this process can be done through the act of communicating with each other and agreement. Agreement is a very important thing. It's even interesting in the Bible that Jesus says, when two or more agree in my name, it will be done. It will be done on earth, or something like that. So there is an important thing to do with agreement, okay? The analyst, there's another quote, the analyst who wishes to rule out conscious suggestion, which is what I was saying before, when you're suggesting to someone, pushing on a theory to them, pushing on a judgment onto them. When the analyst who wishes to rule out conscious suggestion must consider any dream interpretation invalid that does not win the assent of the patient, and he must search until he finds a formulation that does. This is a rule which I believe must always be observed, especially in dealing with those dreams whose obscurity is evidence of lack of understanding on the part of the doctor as well as of the patient. So there you go, that sums it up. That sums up that rule perfectly, all right? So you must reach mutual agreement through joint reflection, okay? This moves us on to rule number 4. So remain open to constructing completely new dream theories, okay? So don't be dogmatic. Take each dream as it comes. There's heaps of room to think about different theories about how things come together. Now, I'll say this, it's not about creating a dogmatic doctrine. We're not talking about that, but we can't throw away, so as a rule, Jung kind of throws away theory to a degree because he can't completely throw away theory, because he needs at least the theory that says that dreams have a meaning in and of themselves and are worthwhile to actually study and interpret. Okay, that's what he says. So we do need to have some theory, but we try not to have a dogmatic and doctrine type stance on it. Okay, but there is an openness to this, that you can develop other ways of looking and thinking about dreams, okay? And Jung is encouraging this, so that's a rule. Remain open to constructing new ways of looking at dreams, okay? Here's a quote here. The doctor should regard every dream as a new departure, as a source of information about unknown conditions concerning which he has as much to learn as the patient. It goes without saying that he should hold no preconceived opinions based upon a particular theory, but stand ready in every single case to construct a totally new theory of dreams. There is still a boundless opportunity for pioneer work in this field. So that's great to know. Another quote from Jung, we must never forget in dream analysis, even for a moment, that we move on treacherous ground, where nothing is certain but uncertainty. A suitable warning to the dream interpreter, if only it were not so paradoxical, would be, do anything you like, only don't try to understand. Okay, so that sums up rule 4. Remain open to constructing new dream theories. So rule number 5. Establish the context of the dream by keeping close to the dream images themselves. Okay, so I'm going to go through this rule. So we're staying close to the dream and the dream images themselves. This rule is kind of an extension of the first rule, that we take dreams as facts. So because we take them as facts, we should stay close to them while interpreting them, okay? And close to the dream images, those images that appear, those little, sequences or images that appear in the dream. We have to stay close to them. And Jung is saying this in opposition to Freud's method of free association. So Freud's method of dreams is looking for, neuroses, looking for kind of complexes by free associating from the dream images to find those things that are wrong with you, basically, right? But the problem with that, Jung points out, is that you can do that from anything, because it doesn't actually care or value the facts of the dreams themselves. It's just that you're free associating. He said you could free associate from a signpost or from the newspaper, a line in the newspaper, and eventually your mind would circle back around and you'd find what was wrong with you, because you would, find your little neuroses and complexes and stuff like that, okay, through the method of free association. But Jung here is saying that, no, how we're going to treat it in analytical psychology is we're going to stay as close to the dream as possible. We're not going to free associate, so you just end up associating to something that's completely different. So I've got a quote here from Jung. When we take up an obscure dream, our first task is not to understand and interpret it, but to establish the context with minute care. Okay, so we're sticking close to the dream there. Here's another quote. We shall best succeed in reading dreams by establishing their context. As already remarked, to do this, we must keep as close as possible to the dream images themselves. And here's another quote. When we have done this for all the images in the dream, we are ready for the venture of interpretation. Okay, so what Jung wants to do is say, for example, he gives an example. If there was, say, a deal table, like a gambling deal table in the dream, he's saying don't just think, oh, there's a gambling deal table that's similar to my desk at home. It must be my desk at home. It's like, no, that's free association. Deal table, similar to a desk. I've got a desk in my home. I love my computer on my desk. That's where I do my work. The dream means I'm going to succeed at my work. That's not what it is. It's like, why did the dream specifically reveal a deal table? Why did it reveal a deal table, like from a casino, right? And he goes, well, don't free associate. So it's not your desk. It actually said the deal table. So what does the deal table mean? And just as a matter of fact way, describe what a deal table means, as if the person didn't know what a deal table was at all, and describe it in such a way that at the end, the person would be able to understand exactly what it was. So then we know, as a matter of fact, what a deal table is. And if you do that with each little image and element of the dream, then we will partially know a little bit of what each symbol means, okay? Because we've gone as a matter of fact of what each symbol means throughout the dream. Now, once you've done that, Jung says, now we are ready to go on to the venture of interpretation, because we've done our analysis. We've analyzed each little part of the dream to see what each part means in and of itself, okay? Not by free associating. Okay, so we're sticking close to the dream images themselves. So that's rule number 5. Okay, rule number 6 is take a dream series over a single dream. Okay, so basically it's a pretty easy rule, basically, that it's very hard to interpret a single dream a lot of the time. But if you're taking a series of dreams, it's easier throughout those dreams to discern the meaning, because often a dream will reveal a particular thing to you. You'll try to interpret it, and whatever you get wrong or miss out, later on you may receive another dream, and it will have a similar meaning, but it would be, oftentimes Jung says it will be more specific, and that will show you what you've got wrong in your analysis. So with those two dreams, you'll go, well, here's the commonality between the two dreams. So you have more confidence knowing that you interpreted the dream right, because they're two different dreams, but they show a similar message in a different way. And then the second dream normally shows something more specific. So it indicates something. It's like you're talking back and forth with the unconscious. You know, it said something, you try to interpret it, and then, so you've said something back in a sense, and then it said to you, well, you know, yes, this is what it means, but this is specifically what I mean. You know, it's like a conversation between the conscious and the unconscious. So that's a rule there. Rule 6, hold a dream series over a single dreams. And I've got a quote here from Jung. Every interpretation is hypothetical, for it is a mere attempt to read an unfamiliar text. An obscure dream taken by itself can rarely be interpreted with any certainty, so that I attach little importance to the interpretation of single dreams. With a series of dreams, we can have more confidence in our interpretations, for the latter dreams correct the mistakes we have made in handling those that went before. We are also better able in a dream series to recognize the important contents and basic themes, and I therefore urge my patients to make a careful record of their dreams and the interpretations given them. So yeah, start recording your dreams, and then you compile a whole lot of them. I can see that I've had a dream series that lasts throughout over the span of years even. Similar dream themes have lasted over the span of years. So it's very interesting. Rule number 7, take dreams seriously. So part of this, I guess, does play into a lot of the other rules. But this kind of rule is more about the serious consequences that can come from not taking a dream seriously, because Jung sees dreams as vitally important. And so they do kind of predict and can help you throughout your course throughout life. And if you don't take on the advice that the unconscious gives you and assimilate it, then you are going to go without that advice, and that can be dangerous, because the conscious mind is not the whole grand picture of things. And so I've got some quotes here from Jung. I have shown in a few examples that dreams contain more than practical helps for the doctor. Dream analysis deserves very special consideration. Sometimes, indeed, it is a matter of life and death. So we know that a lot of people have had dreams of their death, for example, and you know, bad things have happened. But Jung here, he actually had a client that told him a dream about him mountain climbing, because he was a mountain climber, and that in one dream he was so good at mountain climbing or something that he started to climb up into the air, and he realized he could climb into the air, and he just felt so ecstatic about this, and that was the end of the dream. And he would kind of mock Jung and be like, "Are you still interpreting dreams? Does this dream mean something?" And Jung was like, "Dear sir, I know that you can't give up, you know, mountain climbing because you really like it. But please, I implore you, if you continue to do mountain climbing, always take 2 guides with you." Of course, this guy thought it was ridiculous. And a month later, he got him and not a guide, but him and his friend or something got caught up there in some type of trouble or something, and fell down or something. I don't know if it was an avalanche or something, but basically he came near to death but didn't die. So that was another warning. And then another month later or so, he actually went straight off the edge and into air, just like his dream, and then died. And so, I mean, you can't prove that the dream predicted that exact thing, but you know, that was the dream, we saw the facts of the dream, and then we saw the facts in real life. And there's been many cases throughout history of all different well-known things. Just type into Google. I can do it now if you want. Actually, I don't want to make the video too long because it's already long enough. Maybe I'll do that in another video. Okay, there'll be another video idea. So here's just another quote here. No amount of skepticism and critical reserve has ever enabled me to regard dreams as negligible occurrences. Often enough, they appear senseless, but it is obvious we who lack the sense and the ingenuity to read the enigmatical message from the nocturnal realm of the psyche. So it's us that actually has the inability to discern what's going on there. And we're not to blame the unconscious and go, well, it doesn't know what's going on in my conscious life. So that's kind of, that's Jung himself saying that. So here's another quote. No one doubts the importance of conscious experience. Why then should we question the importance of unconscious happenings? Another quote here. The dream content is to be taken in all seriousness as something that has actually happened to us. It should be treated as a contributory factor in framing our conscious outlook. If we do not do this, we shall keep that one-sided conscious attitude which evoked the unconscious compensation in the first place. But this way holds little hope for our ever judging ourselves correctly or finding any balance in life. See, because Jung's idea of dream interpretation and the point of all this is to progress along the lines of what Jung calls individuation. So becoming your whole self, an interpenetration of the conscious and the unconscious. And so I actually love that when Jung talks about that, but I wanted to say that for another video because this one was getting long. But it's an interpenetration between consciousness and unconscious. It's an assimilation. And so it's not just an assimilation of the unconscious into the conscious, but it's also an assimilation of the conscious into the unconscious. And I really want to explore the idea later because I know that it gets quite complex and I don't completely understand it yet. But Jung always hints at things. He's always hinting at things. And I love in his autobiography when he says, I always have to hint at things to people. And I don't know, I just love that. I feel like it makes him mysterious, and that there's more to learn. And so, I'm still learning. But let's move on here. So that was take dreams seriously, okay? Because they do have, they are meant to be there to help us progress and evolve our inner personality. They're there to help us develop our personality further into a more whole person. Rule 8. Interpretation requires exact knowledge of the conscious status quo. Okay, so basically we need to know what's happening consciously with you. We need to know, because you can take a dream and it's just floating around, but if you have a dream, so you've got one part of the equation, we've got the piece that came from the unconscious processes coming up from the dream. That's one part of the equation. Now we need to know what's happening in the conscious realm, what's happening in your life. What are you dealing with? What are you doing? Where are you living? What challenges are you facing? What have you been thinking about? What have you been struggling with? These provide the context to which we can interpret the dream, because a lot of the time the unconscious manifestation of the dream is compensating for what we don't see or have in our conscious life. Okay, so it's kind of like a plus and minus equation. It's kind of like a mathematical or a chemical equation, if that makes sense, to use that kind of analogy, that the unconscious is compensating for something in the conscious. And so we get a fuller picture of where to place the unconscious context of the dream if we can understand the conscious context of the person's life. And so those two things work hand in hand because they're part of the same equation here. So if we know all the facts relevant to both conscious and unconscious, then we can make a more informed interpretation of the dream and what it means for us, and also probably a diagnosis of what we can do in the future. So a cure, so to speak, a way forward, so to speak. Okay, so that's that there. And not only that, but we also want to understand the specifics of the person's history, their religious history, their identity, their affiliations. And the reason we want to know that is certain symbols in the dream may correlate with very specific understandings of particular symbolism. Okay, like for example, when I was younger in 2008, I remember I had a dream about a dove that came out of nowhere and took me and my dad to heaven. And so obviously at that time, I went to church, and I knew about the Bible. I was reading the Bible myself, studying it myself, and so I knew that the dove represents the Holy Spirit. Okay, so in that, it would make sense that in that dream the dove was the Holy Spirit, and so whereas if I was, say, a zookeeper and that was my job, and I just opened up a new, I don't know, section full of doves, or, I was used to, dealing with agriculture for doves, I don't know, something like that, okay? You get the point, right? Then that meaning of the dove is going to mean something completely different because of the actual context of the conscious context of my life and my history, okay, of who I am and my identity. So those things are important for interpreting the symbolism in the dream. So the dreams can be very specific. The symbols in the dream can be very specific. Now, in saying that, Jung, so that's rule number 8. Now we'll move on to the last rule here, and I'm sure there's more rules, okay? And like I said, they're not really hard and fast rules anyway, because there's, we're very open with dream interpretation here. Jungian interpretation is very open, but because it's not dogmatic. Okay, but there are some things that can help us, guide us through this, okay, because of the nature of, and the murky nature of dream interpretation. Okay, so rule 9 is gain an understanding of mythology and archetypal images. Okay, so if you can understand more about the mythological stories and stuff, Jung often shows parallels between dreams of native tribes and different mythologies in Greek mythologies and so forth. For example, one African American he studied from America had a dream about a man being crucified on a wheel. And Jung postulated that it would be impossible for this African American specifically to have learned and known about the Greek myth of Ixion. So Ixion in Greek mythology actually got sacrificed, I think by Zeus, on a wheel. Okay, so his punishment was eternal torture on a wheel. And so the African American's conscious context should have been that of a man being crucified on a cross, because he would have been exposed to Christianity, for example, but not the Greek mythology. There's no way he would be exposed to that Greek mythology, especially the figure of Ixion, which is not like the most prominent Greek mythological character out there. So that shows that there's an archetypal layer in the psyche that we reach sometimes through dreams, okay? And that's why rule number 9 and 8 work together, because there are these type of fixed archetypal images that we see, but they're distinct. They're archetypal symbols. They're not, they're symbols, not icons or images or something like that. And the distinction there is that they can manifest in many ways, but they have a particular pattern, okay? And so, it gets a bit blurry there, but there is a distinction between the conscious context and the archetypal context. And the more you know about both of them, the more facts you know, for example, about mythology, about the ancient religions, about the mythological stories, you can make parallels between them, and you can kind of come to a conclusion of what the dream means, whether it's an archetypal dream, a dream coming from the collective unconscious, or whether it's a dream coming from the personal unconscious, or a little bit of both, okay? And so, yeah, that's basically that. But you can have an archetypal dream that then also shows, that has a particular image and pattern, so we can identify a particular archetype. But then on top of that, it shows something specific, a specific contextual relationship to your conscious life. And we can then see how an archetypal meaning can apply specifically to your reality in your life. So through your dream, the unconscious dream facts connecting to the conscious facts. Okay, so that would be kind of an intimation of all those things aligning together. That doesn't always happen, but I'm just saying that is, from what I can see, possible. Okay, so then that would show you bring to your consciousness an understanding of the unconscious archetypal reality of what was directing you at that time, and the specifics of how that archetype was working out and playing out in your life. Okay, so I'm going to leave it here. So that's the 9th rule: gain an understanding of mythology and archetypal images. I'm still on my journey doing that. But I think that that's very interesting. It helps us with analytical psychology, which is Jung's brand of psychoanalysis or psychology. So thanks for watching this. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please subscribe. I'll be releasing more videos on Jung as I'm going through all of his books. It's going to take me a few years to get through all of them, because I'm going through all the collected works and all the different studies, commentaries on him as well. Yeah, please subscribe. Let me know, give me some comments. Just tell me what you liked about this. Any questions, let me know in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next video.